Hi, I'm going to do something different for today. As opposed to playing some games of Commander, and you may have noticed there's been a long break in between my videos. That's because one of the things that I've run into is that the recording on Magic Online is so frustrating that many of my games have been lost by the system. So, in addition to that, something came up offline, which was Grand Prix Las Vegas. And I haven't played offline in probably almost 10 years, but I decided I was going to go play at this because, me being from California, it's not that far away. And I had a friend there who offered to share his room with me, basically, so I didn't have to pay for that, my friend Lance. So, that made a big difference, and it allowed me to attend, and I want to go over with you the decks I played and how I did. If you've noticed, the name of the video says 78, so that was my final standing. There were roughly, I want to say 7,500 people there, give or take. And this is what I've done is I built the decks I used in Magic Online, so I can discuss those if you're interested. Basically, Lance and I were there a few days before the main event, so we played a few side events. I only got to play in a couple, but the first side event we played was a two-headed giant. So we played two-headed giant, and the way that works is that you sealed deck. So you combine your pools and you just build the two best decks that you can. And what we did was we built two decks that supported each other, and we ended up going undefeated. First, I played this. I was playing the most, the heaviest control deck, I guess, since it had a bunch of counter spells. As you can see, a single splash mountain for the Savage Twister that I could rampant growth for. I had two rampant growths, and then a whole bunch of control cards that allowed me to basically prevent my opponent from dropping bombs and protect a winning position. And then my friend Lance played this version. He was a lot heavier on the bombs, and he had so he was the aggro and I was the control. But he had a lot of support control cards that allowed us to do very well, like mutagenic growth, which he had no way to pay for other than life, uh, unless you count these alloy mirrors, I suppose. Um, he had Elish Norn as a finisher. He had multiple arrests and a whole bunch of combat tricks, including main deck Celestial Purge and Combust, both of which were amazing because in a two-headed giant format, the chances that neither opponent has neither of the two colors is basically nil. You're always going to have a target. Um, so yeah, we kicked ass in that, and the notable play was that in one game, one of our opponents played um, uh, the 4/3 flying creature who, whenever it takes damage, the controller of the source of the damage, that damage is prevented, and for each point of damage is prevented, the source's controller draws cards. It's called Swans of Bryn Argyle. Anyway, one of our opponents played Swans, and the other guy got all excited, and then on his turn he played a Banefire for 7 on his partner's Swans because he wanted to draw 7 cards. But Banefire says that when X is 5 or greater, the damage can't be prevented and the spell can't be countered. So he fireballed the guy's Swans for 7. The damage was not prevented by Swans, and Swans only draws for each point of damage that was prevented. So basically the guy fireballed his partner's creature for no reason, and we went on to win that game pretty easily. So this ultimately resulted in me winning this plus my draft, which I'm going to get to next. So then I went and played a side event. I'll get back to what we won in a minute. So this was my side event draft, and I drafted a deck that I thought was extremely good and was definitely very fun to play. It's very me. As you guys know, I'm a blue mage, so it's just the way it is. It would take some extremely crazy pool of cards or format for me not to be playing blue. So you'll notice a theme in all this. But this deck was great. I went undefeated in this draft, And between those two wins, the two-headed giant and the draft, I ended up taking home 23 packs of Modern Masters, which was really cool. Plus, all the cards, although in this case, none of the rares here are worth much of anything. Wildfire and Apocalypse Hydra, not that great. So this deck worked really well because you could occasionally just go nuts with Thrumming Bird because of the double lore scales, the Gorehorns and the Blood Ogre, the Helium Squirter, the Apocalypse Hydra, but also it just had these gigantic meaty bombs with Hydra and Wildfire, and it had the two lore scales were also bombs because I could protect them very easily with double Stoic Rebuttal, double Mana Leak, and Repeal, although Repeal on lore scale is not necessarily the greatest thing. It also had, I think the notable play of this draft was that in one game, me and my opponent were playing Control, basically, and so I just completely wrecked him with a bunch of like, I think what it was I played Maul Drifter, and then he attacked with like a small creature, and I blocked, and then he pumped his small creature, and then I repealed my Maul Drifter back to my hand, taking no damage. Then on my next turn I replayed Maul Drifter, and then his small creature was unable to attack again because he was out of tricks, and I was up like 5 cards to his 0, and that was pretty much it for that game. So finally move on to the main event. This was my sealed deck pool. I was so pumped. It's not what I opened, of course. We all passed what we opened, and what I opened was horrible, and I don't think that I saw the guy on day 2. But this is what I got past. It was insanely good. Although not my best deck of the entire event, it was certainly up there. It had bounce lands in all 3 colors. It had bombs like aplenty with the Niv Mizzet and the Apocalypse Hydra both. But also, if you'll notice, it had Spike Shot Elder and Scoot Mob. Those two so won me games. It had decent mana fixing with the Sylvan Bounties, although it's not the greatest. They're not rampant growth. Every time you use them, that's what's you're going through your head. And then it had a few things like double Thrumming Bird into Blood Ogre on turn 3, which is a sweet curve. It's a little awkward because like you got to hit him with the bird to trigger the Bloodthirst, and then you don't get to persist on that turn. But on the next turn, Blood Ogre just keeps growing and it gets out of hand pretty quickly. I also had tricks like Wings of Velis Vel onto Spike Shot Elder, make him a 4/4 flyer, or Vines of Vastwood onto Spike Shot Elder to make him 5/5, and then activate his ability, which is pretty nice. And I don't think there were any particularly amazing plays that I made on this. Oh, yes, I take that back. I was playing against a guy who, this was like our second to last game of the day. So basically with this deck, I started out 2-2 before I got like my legs under me, and then I went undefeated for the rest of day 1, and I had to in order to make day 2. So, also I want to hit my sideboard really quick. I had an Apostle's Blessing and Combust, Wildfire, Sundering Vitae, 2 of those. All of which I brought in at various times. The only reason I didn't main deck the Wildfire, by the way, is red wasn't my main color exactly, but also I had a lot of weenie creatures, and I had these high-end cards that I wanted to finish them off with. In retrospect, I'm not sure if that was correct, but anyway. So I'm playing this guy, and I have a Scoot Mob with 5 lands in play, but it's a 1/1, and I have a Kozilek's Predator out, and in my hand is Vines of Vastwood, and I have the Predator out, and I have 1 mana untapped, so I can Vines. My opponent has a black creature that lets him sack a creature to give -1, to give the target. Excuse me. It's 1 black to sack a creature to give another creature -1/-1 until end of turn, and so he's got that in play. But he also has a 2 and a black 2/2. I think it's called Ghostly something or other. He's got a 2/2 who you spend a black and 1 to pump. Gets +2/+2. So basically, he decides to attack me with his pump creature, and he's got exactly 4 mana. And so if I block with Kozilek's Predator, he can just pump twice and kill the Predator. And with only one green, there's no way to kick a Vines of Vastwood. So there's no way to save my Predator. So that's exactly what I do. I block with Kozilek's Predator. He double pumps his guy and kills my Predator. And he was all excited because he thought I made a misplay. And then, of course, I untapped and he uh, uh, had no way to kill the Scute Mob because he basically, if he had played a land, his fifth land, and tried to kill the Scute Mob by sacking a creature, I could have Vines it. And if he'd waited till my upkeep, same thing. So he had no way to kill the Scute Mob. It immediately grew to 5/5. I threw out, and then I used a chump from the Predator to chump his pump creature for a single turn. After that, Scute Mob was a 9/9. The game got insanely out of hand for him very fast, and I ended up going on to day two because I made the sort of counterintuitive play of chump blocking with 3/3 when there was no reason to protect my life total, strictly so that I could get him to tap enough mana to not have the ability to double activate his shrink creature in order to keep Scute Mob alive. And I could only win if he made the greedy play. And once I realized that once I realized that the only way I could win was for him to misplay, I set up a situation where I allowed it to, I allowed him to do exactly that, and it worked out real nice. So on day two, this was what I drafted. I'd been playing green, red, blue for quite some while. So when I started getting cards that would support that, my first pick was Guile in day two. My second pick was a past Apocalypse Hydra, and my third pick was a past Savage Twister. About fell out of my seat. I couldn't believe it. And then on pack, uh, on pack two or three, I got past the Banefire. It was insane. Like, it was just insane. This was certainly the best deck of the entire event for me. There's actually only 15 lands in here, and it's playing X-Spells galore. It's a 15 land, 6 creature draft deck, and it absolutely like just dominated everybody. Had no issues winning anything against anybody. It was so strong. Double Mana Leak, double Narcolepsy, you're a man. Telling Time, 2 more counter spells with the Stoic Rebuttals, double Repeal. Argent Sphinx, who, if you have Metal, is a 4/3 flyer for 4. And if you have Metalcraft, you can spend a blue to basically phase him out and then put him back into play at the end of the turn. So I had multiple artifacts, which meant that theoretically I could do exactly that, making him basically a 4/3 flyer that was unkillable. But I also had Plaxcaster Frogling with Graft 3, so I could graft onto any of my creatures, and then for 2 mana that creature couldn't be targeted. So what that allowed me to do was with Plaxcaster at Graft 3, I could Plaxcaster, Guile, and Guile is 2, and then Argent Sphinx is 3. Even if I didn't have the Metalcraft thing going, I could get a counter on each of these, as well as my Apocalypse Hydra who came with counters, and I could get in a situation where Plaxcaster was literally protecting all of my relevant creatures, Kozilek's Predator and Owlymere basically just being mana sources. So Plaxcaster would just protect all of my relevant creatures, and my opponents just couldn't do anything. Like, they just couldn't do anything. They just sat there and stared at creatures that they couldn't kill that were gigantic, like Hydra and Guile, and the big-ass flyer. They just stared at them, unable to do anything about them. And if they had too much pressure and I couldn't turn my creatures sideways for some reason, then I just did nothing. And I just collected removal and counter spells in my hand and waited until I drew Savage Twister and then blew them out. And that also worked. If it was Guile in play, I would just start counterspelling their cards, and then casting them and killing them with their own cards. Amazing deck. So I went undefeated with this deck on day 2, and then there was a second draft, and in order for me to have a chance at the top 8, I had to go undefeated, and this is what I drafted. As I said, I'm a blue mage at heart. I'm going to adjust these slightly differently. This deck did not come together the way that I wanted. It actually played pretty well. The only thing that I was missing, and it was a very painful thing to be missing, was I didn't have enough cheap removal. There's no tribal flames, there's no burst lightnings. I just didn't see them. I mean, if I'd seen them, I would have taken them. And if I had been able to take cards like that, then I could have um, shored up my early game just a little bit better. And I ended up losing to a uh, bad bad mana draw. I mulliganed into I won my first two games, or my first match, and in the second match, I mulliganed into a hand with one uh, land and two baubles, and the other cards in my hand were Telling Time, Remand, and Repeal. So like cards that are 2 mana and say draw cards and dig. It was a perfect hand except for the one land thing, and I'm going first. And I decided I was going to take the risk and keep, and I didn't draw a land for 6 turns, and I literally drew and discarded a card for. I mean, I played first turn bauble, second turn bauble, so I didn't have to draw and discard for a while, but I basically sat there for 6 turns, making 0 plays, and died to my opponent before I ever found a second mana source. So that was our first game. In the second game of the second match, I went turn 2. I went first turn bauble, second turn sack it, turn 3 chalice for 2 into like Spellskite. Turn 4, I played chalice for 3 and some kind, and then alloy mirror, and then turn 5 Kozilek with like Spellskite backup, and he scooped his cards up pretty fast, and then in the last game, he sideboarded an extra 2-drop threats, and I didn't sideboard in my commies, and I got overrun the turn before a Kozilek would have come down and completely changed the board. So I then moved on and beat the next guy and then took a draw or something like that. I can't remember exactly how it shook down. Oh no, I went on to the last guy and took a draw and ID'd into 78th place because I was at this point just tired and I was frustrated that I had lost the game by the virtue of the bad mulligan system that Magic has, where if I had mulliganed any further, I would have mulliganed to death, and it forced me to keep a hand that wasn't strong enough, and I just lost. Good stuff though. I had a lot of fun, and in the end, my prizes were. Let's see. I didn't have to pay for my room thanks to my friend Lance. So I only paid for food, which ended up being quite a bit because it's Vegas. But and cards, entry fees. So I paid entry fees, and when it all comes down to it, what I walked away with was $250 in prize money, a foil Kozilek, or no, excuse me, I sold a foil Kozilek and a couple other cards um, for $80 and used that to pay for our like victory meal. So $250, a foil Dark Confidant, a Spellskite, a couple of Cryptic Commands, and I had a lot of fun. So I hope you enjoyed. Like, this is all talking, and I know you didn't get to see it, but I did actually have a good time at Grand Prix Vegas, and plays pretty well. And so it does turn out that even though I've only been playing online since about 2009, I still am able to play Magic at events, and I can do all right. So thank you for watching. Next time, I promise I will have a video with actual games. And if you're curious, really quick, I will show you that the deck that I am still playing is Olaro in Commander, and this is what it looks like, except we're missing a card. Weird. We are missing a Planeswalker, and I don't remember what the heck it's called. That's weird. It's being tested. So where are you? There he is, Narset. That's what it's called. So this is the version of the commander deck that is currently being played by me. I am not 100% that this is the best version possible, but it basically replaced Counting Gem with Narset, and I can't remember what the other swap was, but I added Deprive just as a force trigger for land attacks, and because it's blue-blue counter target spell, that's pretty good. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching the video and listening to me blather on. And like I said, next time I'll have some games for you, and I'll see you then.